Good vibes, good vibes, good vibes. Okay, and we are back from the last podcast, and we're going to continue here on Anchor by Spotify. This is Seth Moore coming to you again. And we were just with you a moment ago, and we said we would be back, and we are back. And so we're going to continue, and we're going to pick up where we left off about a week ago when we were doing a series on all the gods with woolly black hair, okay? And all the gods were black with woolly hair. Okay, so we covered that, and also we covered African popes contributed to Christianity. We covered that. And we also covered, we also covered the Grimaldi Negroes. Okay, so now you know the Grimaldis were a people of 40,000 years ago. And this African group, they were the ones to inhabit and discover the continent of Europe some 40,000 years ago. We have, of course, proven documentation and artifacts, so forth and so on. And they've inhabited Italy, Spain, France, Switzerland, Illyria, Bulgaria, Southern Europe. They was Brittany, the whole England, Wales, Scotland. We were all there. We discovered all these places. Okay, and so we covered that. And yeah, they were the first ones, as I mentioned, who settled Spain and lived there for thousands of years prior to the 1492 conquest of Granada by the rebellious armies of Ferdinand and Aragon, of Isabel and the Castile. Okay, so we covered that. And we also covered Black Hercules, African concepts. We covered that. Okay, we talked about how Heru and how all these Greeks, the Caucasian Greeks, of course, when they came in, how they emulated all the concepts of Horus, Heru, and Hercules, and all these derivatives are African derivatives and African origins. So we cover that, and of course we've had even Greek scholars to attest to it and confirm it, such as Herodotus. Okay, he affirmed it in his writings about Hercules was an Egyptian, and from the time immemorial, from the first century BC, and how another Greek, Diodorus, wrote in regards to this. So we covered that. Okay. And we also covered the American Superman, African concepts about superheroes. We also covered that. Okay, we covered that. And this is why I say to you guys, and I have been saying for some time, about the power that you have. And how that the African culture has been so appropriated and copied, but at the same time, how it's been so pejorative when it comes to how people have treated it. They want to emulate it, but then they want to knock it at the same time. It's kind of like a love-hate kind of thing. And so we covered this, And this is where you have global hegemony in terms of how that these structures are set up, and they want to keep this global hegemony in place. When it comes to the African, when it comes to the indigenous peopling of the globe. And we talked about how these superheroes were emulated and how they were replicated by the non-African people. Okay, and it shows, and they have given proof of, the Egyptian gods and so forth and so on. And we covered that. Okay, and even has gone as far as to replicate the art of Africa, how that, I just found out, I'm gonna do a podcast on that, how that Gucci, listen to this, y'all, you may not know about this, I'm gonna do a podcast on how Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton, they've taken their designs from Africa. And even they've gone to the Maasai tribe with, if you really look at the European runway model shows, you'll see them wearing Maasai replicated shawls. They went to the Maasai and they copied all of these designs. See, what I want you to understand, is that these people can't do nothing without us, because we are the creators. We are the originators of all of this. And it just proves, and I don't hate white people. I just hate what they do. You know what I mean? I don't hate them. I really don't hate them. I don't hate them. I hate their arrogance. I hate their hypocrisy. Like I hate any black person's hypocrisy, and I hate any black person's arrogance just as much, because we should know better. But anyways, what I'm saying is we've created all these arts and designs because, as we all know, when the Moors came into Spain, they brought in the Egyptian cottons and the silks and the sashes and the turbans and you name it. They brought it to Spain. They brought it to Europe. So fashion, all of this started with us. You didn't teach us how to dress. When you look at us, you're looking at the originators of everything. The arts, the sciences, the dress, the culinary, the mathematics, the astronomy, the seafaring men and women, and even when you come down to war and strategic battle plans, the whole gamut. And I don't say that to be arrogant. I don't say that to be pejorative to any other group. It's just facts. That's all it is. It's just historical, global, world facts. And like I said, there has been global hegemony to suppress and to subdue and to subjugate all of these creative creations. So we covered that. And so I again, I wanted to mention that, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to do a podcast on how Gucci, Louis Vuitton, they copied all their designs from Africa. And I'll show you, they have pictures. I'll show you. And they even went to the Maasai tribe. And so when they're doing these runway shows in Europe, you'll see a lot of the patterns, and you'll see the plagiarizing. And this is something that has been done throughout millennia. So we'll cover that as well. And so the origin of the white race, we covered that. And we talked about the albino. We talked about how the black woman has the genes, the Eve seed, where they can produce black and white babies. And we talked about how that leprosy is a deficiency, and we talked about that. And the word albino comes from the Latin root albus, meaning white, but it can also mean blank, as in devoid of color or features. The word was coined around 1660 to mean white Negro, but Baltzar Tellus, okay, a historian missionary, in order to describe the tribal members he saw along the West African coast when we talked about it. In other words, included in the Greek, Leukostrop, the Greek word for white. And they talked about the Leuco Ethiopians, meaning white Ethiopians. The albinos were also called moon children because they had to avoid being exposed to excessive direct sunlight. Okay, and we know what that is for the non-melanated person. Okay, and they only usually came out at night. Okay, and they talked about the use of the word Dundis, meaning ghost or spirit. Okay, and of course they were walking around, and so when the people actually seen people like this, they were like, they were in shock because all the other people on the planet were melanated people. And so we talked about that, and let us go on. And so we talked about, we also talked about, yes, I think we talked about this as well. We discussed this, the cave dwellers. Okay, we talked about fleeing the wilderness in the former times, and how that who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat, and they were driven forth from among men, and they cried after them as after a thief. And this talks about this in Job 30:3. You could read that. And also you could look at 30:6. It says to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys and caves of the earth. And in the in the Quran they talk about it differently, but it's pretty much the same. So we discussed that as well, and you can find that in Obadiah 1:1 for you guys who are Bible people, and you like to read your Bible. And so we talked about that. I believe we talked about Edom. And it talks about, we have heard a rumor from the Lord, and as an ambassador it is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. And even it talks about it in Micah 2:1. You could read that as well. So again, and like I said before, you want to have right understanding. You want to have right interpretation when you're comparing these things, because you don't want to be looking at things one way and miss what you're supposed to receive. Okay, and Micah says, it talks about woes to those who devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds, and I spoke about that, and it talks about, okay, my computer's starting to act a little crazy, and we started out with, no, we didn't start out with that, but chapter when we talked about what it meant to be black. Okay, and we talked about the deformation of the African people. We talked about that. Okay. And we talked about black inferiority and white supremacy. We talked about the degrading stuff that did, and how the different caricatures and TV shows and how that they viewed us, and you know, and the African story rewritten. We talked about that, and how they rewrote our history and made us, you know how it goes. Yeah, we talked about that as well. And let's skip along right here. And Greek philosophers learned from the Negro. Yep, that's true. Some of them didn't even go to Kemet to study, but they claimed they did. And this is why I mentioned before as well. They don't want to teach CRT in schools because they would have to write the whole history and the comfortability, African beliefs and religions. We talked about that, but as I was saying, they would have to teach a whole new curriculum, and they don't want to fragilize the little white children to tell them who their people really are, and telling them that they really didn't do a whole lot, in terms of developing societies and cultures and high societies, and it was the black man that did it, black man and black woman. So they don't want to tell these children that, because it would devastate them. That all the kings and queens of the earth were black men and black women, and that white people came in and they whitewashed and plagiarized and stole and killed and murdered. They don't want to tell these kids that, and so they're not giving over to the truth. And of course, we talked about the black pharaohs and pyramids, architects, and how that first structures on the planet were created and built by black men and women. Okay, so, and my computer actually took me back so I can give you that. I guess that was purposely. And it talks about how Africans dominated the world, which in fact we did. Okay, let's see what we have here. False teachings aided by the slave masters. Okay. I don't know if we talked about that, did we? I don't know if we talked about that. I don't remember. So what we'll do, we're going to start there. We'll start there. Yeah, we'll start there. And it says, it should now be very clear that much of what people are still being taught about black people was written in collusion with the slave merchants who had European world domination in mind. It can now be seen how racism corrupts and distorts everything along its path. Okay, and so true, because it is it's a malignant. It is what we call I'm trying to think of the word. It'll come back to me. But it's a cancer, and that's basically what I'm trying to say. So it is, and it has what we're reading here. It corrupts and it distorts everything along its path. Black parents should further see the need to question everything that Western education proclaims to be the truth, because as has been revealed, many things that were created by black Africans have been given a white face. You see what I'm saying? And so they don't want the world to know that we created these civilizations all around the globe. They give it a different name. They cut up maps, and they do this and turn maps upside down so that you won't know. They try to make Europe bigger than Africa. You could do that too. But at the same time, we inhabited Europe. We established Europe. Africans did. And then when, of course, they came out of the mountains and the caves, they came down, on a warpath, bloodletting. When we went up there to let them out, and try to civilize them, you know, they was on the warpath, man. They were mad because, of course, they were cold, hungry, starving, you know, and they had no semblance. They didn't have no semblance of civilized societies. They didn't have any semblance of faculties, right thinking, right thinking. They were still in a brute beast of a mentality because that's what they were accustomed to, unfortunately. They were accustomed to a brute beast of living. And you crawling around on all fours and dragging women by their hair, beating them upside the head with clubs, and dragging dead bodies in the cave and letting it stay in the cave with you and rot, and you know, and while it just was heinous, terrible stuff. And unfortunately, when you're uncivilized, these are the ways that you act. So you couldn't help yourself, basically. And I don't say that again to be pejorative, but I say it because it's the truth. In the attempt to display more of a family portrait, here is a picture, Imhotep II left in the... Okay, so in other words, plagiarizing the grandfather of King Tut and Pharaoh Akhenaten. And on the right, it shows that they're clearly black. So they tried to whitewash the stone structure to make it look as though it was a European. And they just really need to stop that. You need to quit, really. You need to stop. Give up the gig. It's done, man. It's been proven. You need to stop because you're still trying to claim something that's not yours. And it just goes to show you that this has been done down through millennia. It's been done forever, you know. And it gets old, and it's monotonous. You know, it gets monotonous that, you know, I even become a little perturbed when I see black people still doing videos trying to prove that the Kemites were black. And of course, you know, there's a reason for it. I know there's a reason for it, but I get bothered by that now because I'm saying to myself, you shouldn't do podcasts or things now trying to still prove that the Kemites were black people. They know that, and the world knows it. You know, and you're still trying to prove to people that these people were indigenous or these people were people of the sun. There have been scholars, when they did the UNESCO conference, it was proven by one of the greatest scholars in the world, Sheikh Anta Diop, okay, and Obinga. They proved to these Europeans, they had a panel, they obliterated them because they weren't even prepared because they didn't have the proof. They did not have documented proof. They came up with all of these theorems and theories about how that other people came in and that, you know, that the Kemites ruled in the north or the south or something like that. They ruled over this particular region, but this other region of Kemet was a Eurasian region where no, quit all that. Please, quit all that noise. So, again, I said I become a little perturbed when I still see black people still trying to prove that the Kemites were black people, you know, and that's just my feeling. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do feel that way. Okay, so now it says here, okay, it talks about how Akhenaten's father was the same, which would make King Tut and Akhenaten brother. There is a red granite lion in the British Museum on which King Tut said, "My father was Imhotep III." As usual, the Greeks transposed his name to Amenophis. So the Greeks are always changing the names of stuff. That's just like they name Kemet Egypt. Egypt is a Greek name because it's the land of the blacks. When Diodorus and Herodotus, when they came to Kemet and they seen the high culture and the structures and the pyramids, they were in awe. They could not believe. They just was like floored. They were floored. Okay, so, and it talks about Amenhotep's wife, the third, Queen Tai, and it is not known if she were Tut's mother, but she was Akhenaten's mother. So King Tut and Akhenaten would be half brothers at least. And of course, you look at Queen T, she looked like somebody, a sister you know. And it talks about both the native Africans, and also note the man and woman are portrayed as equals. And she's sitting beside him with her hand around his waist. And this is what so this is why, and it is this playful move that the carving comes to life. So this is why black women need to get in line, because you're co-regents with the king. The queen is co-regents. You have as much power. So women on this trip that they're on, I don't get it. Come back to your higher self. Again, it emphasizes the point that there was great equality of the sexes in the ancient Kemetic world, where women and men held equally prominent roles. And so when you look at this, you can see it was a very beautiful black woman, the mother of Pharaoh Akhenaten, and probably also the mother of King Tut. Just awesome. And it talks about in this wall mirror carving on the is another image of Queen T, but to observe the destruction of the face of the black African queen because of the hatred against the reality that a black African civilization was responsible for bringing light to the entire world. Do you hear me? And so they went about, when they went to certain areas, they began to destroy a lot of the monuments, such as when Napoleon went to Kemet and he had his officers to shoot off the noses of what they call the Sphinx. And that's not the proper word for it. But this is what they did. And it talks about the several images of Akhenaten, and a picture from San Francisco's Chronicles there was indicating the writer was concerned about Akhenaten's physical appearance, just suggesting his swollen lips and puckered lips and a fleshly nose, because they talked about how he had, his form was kind of different because he had hips like a woman, you know. And unfortunately, and I don't know if I say unfortunately or not, but I've seen some men built like that. And that's kind of like a little strange to me, but, you know, and I'm sure some of you have, you know, but so, you know, it's one of those things where, of course, they talked about his connection to alien life, and there's no doubt that our people come from the stars as well. So that's not surprising. That's not surprising at all. It's just that we have to really hone in on our spirituality, and know where we fit, and we fit in the whole universe. So if these features represented some form of illness, then there are lots of black people who even today are suffering from that same illness. Because as I said, there are people that are like that. And then it talks about Nefertiti. And it says a famous picture of Akhenaten's wife, which is known all over the world during the 18th dynastic period. The pharaohs, especially Thutmose, went to Asia and Syria and married the daughters of kings as a political move and as a way of solidifying the empire. Many Asian women were also brought in and were married to the ruling pharaohs in Egypt. So this particular picture of Nefertiti, which is displayed in the Berlin Museum, may seem less Africoid, but that is because she was a foreigner. And so they talk about how that they're trying to still make Nefertiti a European, and they're still trying to make, Cleopatra. They're trying to make her a European. However, there is one detail that should be noted about this head. It was found in an artist's workshop on the floor without Nefertiti's name on it. So the assumption was that it must have been Nefertiti because it had a royal headdress, but it could just as easily have been one of Nefertiti, her Akhenaten's daughters. And then, of course, we come in all shades. So we can come from light to cocoa brown to caramel to copper to blue black to damn near white. So you can't rule out shades because we are in every shade category. And on the right, as is another picture known to be that of Nefertiti, which is located in the temple. But this image is not shown all over the world, but like the previous one, notice that she has contracted the same kind of sickness that her husband was suffering from, which was supposed to be Froelich syndrome. And we don't really know that for sure because that's what they've given the assertion and the name of what they termed as some kind of deformity. It says, according to some doctors, this was caused a European to swell around the lips and so on. But the problem with this explanation is that Froelich syndrome makes you sterile. And clearly Akhenaten was anything but sterile since he had 6 daughters. The brother was not sterile. He had a strong seed. And then, of course, we got big lips anyway. So what they told, that's why these women nowadays, Botox and trying to get, sticking injections in their lips to make their lips look big. See, they doing all this stuff, getting butt shots and breast shots. And that's why you see all these women, with these huge derrieres and trying to look like black women. Any case, it is evident that the physical features of Nefertiti as seen in her temple and the carving, it shows to be black like Akhenaten's wife, which was found carved into the wall of her tomb. And so they have, of course, features of her. And of course, as you know, they've gone on to create and to steal all these artifacts. Just total plundering. Just thievery. And they were instrumental. They were the wife and husband team who actually instituted monotheism. Okay, and they were were, were by the Kemites. Um, they actually did not agree with this new idea of what he brought in, and so of course there was a lot of consternation when it came to honoring him, and they went about to destroy everything that he had created in terms of going around and destroying his likeness, breaking off his features on walls and so forth and so on. And let me say too, as you already know, you got haters among black folks too. Even in this their culture. Believe me, you had some haters, and they got rid of them. But you had you. It's not nothing new under the sun. It talks about the Book of the Dead and the Book of the Coming Forth from Darkness into Light, which is the oldest religious literature in the world, is done. It would be very clear to see that it comes from a position of total monotheism. In fact, there is no period in Egyptian history, or I would say Kemetic history, where there was not the one great God who was depicted as having many manifestations and many powers. And so that's why I say, well, this is where people can dismiss that many gods thing. It wasn't that. What Akhenaten actually gave to the world was not the concept of monotheism, but the model of a particular type of monotheism, which was later picked up and viewed as foreign. They viewed it as foreign. Akhenaten had turned that monotheism into a new form of monotheism and chose the sun as its symbol. And that's where you get Ra from. He worshipped Aten, which meant that the old bishops were being put out of power, as there was a group of priests at Luxor called the priests of Amen, the hidden god. And see, this is where a lot of the controversy came in. Who adhered to the older format. Imagine what would happen in the Baptist church, the Methodist church, or the Catholic church if there was suddenly a new religion established that would put all their priests out of power. Yeah, it's about power and control. There was an internal conflict over the conversation by Akhenaten, which was really a move to dominate the country politically. And it is believed that Akhenaten might have been assassinated, as it appears that he met an untimely death because he was seen to be taking the country into a new religious direction. And this is what happens. Today, this knowledge should be of vital importance to black people, since they call themselves monotheists, and black people are, in fact, the most religious people on the face of the earth. So to know the history of the religion that is established is very crucial to understanding that religion. And that is a religion. But it was simulated through spiritual means. And this is why I just want you to know the difference. That religion is a practice of spirituality. Okay? But if you're not interpreting it correctly and you're not adhering to its principles, you're missing it. For example, the idea that the Africans were not monotheists before the Hebrew religion or the Christian religion is completely false, because of Africans were always monotheists. The perception that Africans had no religion until missionaries from Europe and other places arrived to save these uncivilized pagan Africans. Therefore, an eternal debt of gratitude is owed to them is again totally false, and very misleading. This is Meritaten, one of the daughters of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Okay, and it talks about her hair, and this is, we're talking about getting back to the hair, your crown, and how she was rocking dreads, she was rocking braids. When you see the actual royal wigs like this on the heads of the Cairo Museum, they look as though they originated from those huge afros that were worn in the 1960s, even to the extent that they had peppercorn curls on the wigs. Yeah. And they don't know if they were really wigs. That could have been their hair. You know, because you're talking about people who come from a region where they're in the sun. I don't know where they get that wig stuff from. However, the wigs were very typical and depicted the native African hairstyle. You know? Okay, so, and here's another, it talks about the daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, wherever black mummies are dug up or carvings are discovered with big noses, big lips, and elongated heads. To a European, it may suggest something abnormal, but it is very normal to an African. Instead of admitting that they are African, scholars would offer incredulous explanations, even suggesting that they were deformed Europeans, as was the case with these daughters of Akhenaten. See, no, stop it. Stop that, please. See how they do? Stop it. They were deformed Europeans. See, and I remember growing up. Black women, when the child was born, they would shape the baby's head. They would do something with the head, and they would even do something, push the nose up a little bit or whatever. I don't know why they did it, but they were shaping the baby's head because I think it stimulated brain activity. Okay, and they talked about how that the reason why the elongated heads with the Africans and the Kemites were the way they were was because they came from the stars, and they had such astuteness when it came to their spirituality and their connection to the creation and to the Creator in terms of developing these high societies and civilizations. So no, it wasn't no deformity. European scholars, you can, stop that noise. No, but this had everything to do with their intuition and their prowess with the Creator. So, they're always trying to come up with something that's so, so abstract and, well, something that's not relevant. So anyways, we're going to stop there for now, and we're going to be coming back and giving you more as we continue this series. Okay, so remember to like and share. Stay with us, and we'll see you guys again. Hit that button and have a great rest of your day and evening. Until next time, this is Seth Moore coming to you again here on Anchor by Spotify. Enjoy. Stay high.